Hello and welcome to episode 5 of a DM's Guide to Tomb of Annihilation. Thanks again for tuning in. So today we're going to descend into level 2, the Dungeon of Deception. So before we go into level 2, I'm going to include and explain Area 17 and I'm going to go over Area 7 again. Area 17 is a waterfall I described in episode 2. Area 17, underground waterfall. The underground river plunges down to a dark rocky chasm. Cold air swirls from above like the breath of some monstrous creature. Through the gloom you spot an ornate treasure chest resting on a ledge opposite. So Area 17 is where you can access level 5 from the onset. You can access level 5 from here, or you can access level 2 from the centre. So your characters get here, so how they get to the treasure chest. They can climb along, they've got to make a strength check, but as they arrive here, they realise very quickly that this chest is actually a mimic. The mimic's going to attack, and when the mimic attacks, they've got to make a dexterity saving throw or see if they fall 100 feet into the area below. So yeah, they'll fall 100 feet, and then they'll take 10d6 damage, or no damage if they succeed the saving throw. So you might ask, what is a mimic? So a mimic is a chest with teeth, and it bites people. So that pretends to be items their adventurers might want. And it's a staple of Dungeons & Dragons. It has low armor class, hit points are not that high, and it's one thing it does is, it sneaks and it bites you. And you take piercing damage and acid damage. Now it's time for us to descend into level 2, the Dungeons of Deception. In level 2, just a quick overview, we have 2 trickster gods, we have Papa Soul here, and then we have Nang Nang here. Over in this region, we have the False Tomb. 19, we have one of the most controversial traps in the tomb. 18 over here is descends into Injin's tomb, which I'll discuss in level 3. And on the left hand side, we have Weller's Workshop, and then we have the Tomb Dwarves creating the Tomb Guardians. As your players arrive in the Dungeon of Deception, they'll see this plaque on the wall, 7B, and this is when Acererak gives some more clues. Acererak's second warning. The ring is a path to the other tomb. The dead adore sunlight. Only a jewel can tame the frog. Bows the dead god intoned. Into darkness descend. So these clues, so the first line is a clue to number 19. The dead adore sunlight is a clue to number 20. Line number 3, only a jewel can tame the frog, is a clue for 21, Nang Nang's tomb. Bows the dead god intoned is a clue for 22. And Into Darkness Descend is a clue for 18. So let's start off with Area 18. Area 18, the Devil Pit. Walls and floor of this 15-foot square room are cracked and carved with images of terrified humanoids falling. Set into the middle of the floor is a stone bas-relief of a bearded devil face. Painted green, furlong cries echo from the black void of its gaping maw. So this is really straightforward. This effectively is just a tunnel that leads down directly into Injin's tomb below. If your characters cast Dispel Magic, the magical darkness becomes a swarm of bats that fly up and they just harass your players. Injin's tomb below is actually quite a complicated puzzle, and if your characters access the room from this orientation, they arrive in a room with no clues. So it's actually very, very dangerous, potentially can kill your players. When we go to level 3, I will explain more detail and I'll show you a 3-dimensional map of Injin's tomb. 19, Gravity Ring, the most controversial trap in the whole Tomb of Annihilation. At a 4-way intersection, the corridors to north and south curve upwards and out of sight, but with no rails or steps to allow them to be climbed. The corpse of a half-human, half-goat creature in robes scrawls 10 feet to the north. It grips a staff tipped with a bronze goat's head. So first things first, let's talk about Gravity Ring. What makes it so important and why is a lot of discussion about it? The curving corridor forms a perfect circle, imbued with magical gravity that keeps creatures bound to the floor as they walk along it. Here's a diagram I've done earlier. So this is a cross section. So let's see your characters here. We have the corpse down there. If your characters begin to walk in this direction, they'll start noticing that as they walk, they'll begin to stick to the ceiling. And if your characters make it halfway, they go through an invisible portal that's undetectable to magic. And as they arrive down, they'll notice that this corpse has disappeared and they have went into the Mirror Tomb. So the Mirror Tomb is exactly the same as the Tomb of the Nine Gods, except it's false. All the traps are the same, all the items are the same, however, they don't exist. And this world reset every 24 hours. So let's say your party go through the tomb and they complete every single challenge. After 24 hours, it'll reset. And your characters have to come back to this hallway and go back the way they came to actually compete through real Tomb of the Nine Gods. It is quite cheeky. Your characters potentially could do the whole tomb and have to do the whole thing again. I think this would work well if your players have played campaigns before and they're not really attached to their characters. However, for my characters, I believe that they'll get frustrated if they did this by accident and had to play the entire tomb. So what I did was I heavily emphasized that when they got through this, that all the monsters they met were flickering and that things weren't real. So when they came to this puzzle room here and this puzzle room here in the false tomb, I made sure there was no items and there's no mobs and that they weren't getting attacked. They only had to attack the actual puzzle by itself. But that was my personal take on it. However, if you won't do it as the book intended, your characters could play through the entirety of the Tomb of the Nine Gods, then realise they're in the wrong tomb. That's why Gravity Ring is quite controversial. Some people like it, some people hate it. I'll let you decide that. So let's talk about this corpse then. Who is this goat man on the floor? The corpse belongs to Devin Dasher. He's a wizard and a member of the company The Yellow Banner. So the Yellow Banner is a company of adventurers that went into the tombs shortly before your player characters have. And there's a number of clues dotted around Omu of their existence. When you inspect the corpse, you notice that Devin's goat-like features are the result of a curse. And if you look at his corpse, you can see that he's full of arrowheads and he's covered in axe wounds. Here's that this man has been attacked by the Tomb Dwarves when he's been separated from his party. So when your characters search Devin's body, they find an ink pot that never runs dry, or the 100 gold pieces. They find his spellbook. They also notice that he's a staff of striking, which has been cursed, and he also has a book. So if your characters find Devin's journal, they'll see this. To those who find this, know that I, Devin Bashir, am the last surviving member of the company of the Yellow Banner. The warlord Razni stripped us of all our weapons and threw us in here on orders of his master, Acerak. I can only imagine our souls are to be fed to his phylactery. Alas, it seems to be he has won. Our company was separated after the incident with the four-armed gargoyle. The tomb's guardians threw Osur to pieces, and with him we lost the Starfallen. Our quest was a failure. Even if we'd found the eye, the elf princess was gone. My friends wouldn't have lasted long without their weapons, especially with a doppelganger in our midst, as Seth suspected. Of course, I kept my staff. I'm sure Brixton would see some humour in that. Gentle reader, let a dying man offer you one piece of advice. Acerak is a trickster who desires nothing but your soul. His riddles may help you, but in the end, his final secret will always lead to your doom. Tomorrow save us all. With this note, there's a couple of clues. So you know that there's a formed gargoyle, that might be a trap layer on the tomb, which is the bottom of level 4. We know that the Tomb Guardians tortured to pieces, and they've lost the Starfallen. So what is the Starfallen? Well, that's an item we'll discuss later on this level, because it sits in the Tomb Dwarf workshop, in room 27. You know there's a doppelganger in their midst, which we'll find on level 5 within a mirror, and you get one last warning about Acerak and why Acerak is a bad, bad man. Javelin's journal explains how he got there, and with the journal it will depict various encounters which you can use to give them more stories up to yourself. You can add in different stories. Earlier entries chronicle the exploits of the company of the Yellow Banner and Chult. The company make landfall at Kitchen's Inlet and follow the river along to Liverlow, before cutting south west into the jungle towards Omu. It also talks about how they met the Yunti and their discovery of the true tomb entrance. The main thing is it does not talk about Devin's staff, and if your characters spend 10 minutes poring over the journal, they'll notice there's other members that might be in the tomb. So you have Lord Brixton, Bravis Borderhorn, Seward, and Sephiroth. And these characters you will find if you do the different puzzles in the tomb. What is a Staff of Striking, and what is this curse? A Staff of Striking is a magical quarterstaff, and if you attack with it, you can do extra force damage. If you spend all the charges, if you roll a d20 on a 1, the staff becomes non-magical. So it allows your wizard to do some more damage in combat. So let's talk about his curse then. Any character who tunes to this staff transforms into a goat humanoid hybrid over the course of 3 days. So the character's eyes become goat-like, stumpy horns spurt from their brow. On the last day, the character's fingers and toes melt in double digits. Other than that, it doesn't really do any effects. It can be removed by remove curse, great restoration, and if you cast a wish, you can completely rid this staff of the curse. So that is number 19, the Gravity Ring. We're now going to look at number 20, the False Tomb. This room smells of wine. On a checkered board marble floor, a gilded coffin sparkles in sunlight streaming down from the chamber's vaulted ceiling, which arches 12 feet overhead. 4 huge stone gargoyle heads, their mouths agape, protrude from the walls. If you come in, you notice there's a big stone block here above the head of the characters. If your characters make a perception check, they'll notice there's a stone block directly above their head. You'll see there's 4 mouths, and directly behind is a massive chamber filled with red wine. In the centre you have a coffin, and it's glued to the floor. Directly overhead they have illusionary sunlight. If they flip open the lid of this coffin, it's not locked. There's a plaque inside, and inside the plaque, the wooden plaque inside the coffin says, "Drown your sorrows in common." Once the illusionary sunlight hits this plaque, this door is going to slowly descend over the course of 6 seconds. So your characters have got a choice. Do they stay in, or do they flee? If they flee, and they stop right here, they need to make a dexterity check, or they're going to get crushed. If they fail the dexterity check, they're going to take 10d10 bludgeon damage, and when they take the damage, they're going to be pushed back into the room. So once that door seals, these 4 masks are going to open up, and they're going to fill the room with red wine. So how do you prevent the trap going off? Well, if your character casts Dispel Magic on the illusionary sunlight, or if they don't show the plaque to the sunlight, the trap won't set. So if your characters are possessed by trickster gods, trickster god Moa or Kuzuban, they'll hear this advice. Spirited Kuzuban tries to persuade his host to throw open the coffin lid and pummel whatever's inside. Kuthra Moa points out that this tomb doesn't match the symbolism of any of his godly companions. So there is no trickster god in this tomb. The real trickster god is in this room here, which you can access through one of these tunnels. So your characters can attempt to swim through these tunnels, however they've got to make a strength check to push through, or they can wait until the room is finally filled and they can swim through without doing a strength check. Each round, the room's going to fill with 1 foot of red wine. Once it reaches 3 feet, 3 water weirds that are now wine weirds will attack the players, and their one goal is to drown the players in the red wine. So what is a water weird? It's a large elemental that's created of water. Once it's immersed in water, it's invisible, and since we're talking about wine weirds, they're invisible if they're engulfed in wine, which means your characters have a disadvantage to hit, and the water weird will die if it leaves the water, or in our case wine. So it has 1 action, and it's simply going to constrict the players and it's going to try to drown them. So they have a relatively high hit points and a low armor class. So your character's best bet for attacking them would be spells which they are effect. Hitting them will be very difficult since they have a disadvantage to hit. They have a choice. They can swim through here, 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 or here. If they're lucky, they can swim through, or they can wait it out. So if your characters try to wait out and hold their breath, they'll have to wait 100 rounds, which means even the strongest barbarian is going to drown in this wine. And the main thing is, since it's wine, it's not water, any ability to breathe underwater does not work in the wine. How do you get out of this room? Well, you can either wait, you can swim through this tunnel here, you perhaps could teleport from here to here, or you simply flee the room before the stone goes down. That's room number 20, the false tomb. So let's see what happens when they crawl through to area 24. So area 24 is Nang Nang's tomb. The air here reeks of sulphur and brimstone. On the floor of this chamber, a pentagram traced in salt surrounds an ornate sarcophagus. Its lid's covered with figurines of prancing frog-like humanoids. So we've got a pentagram on the floor made of salt. What's inside it? You have an invisible grey slad. He paces inside the salt pentagram, and he cannot leave the salt pentagram while the salt's intact. If any of the salt's displaced, he'll flee, and he's going to try to find his gemstone in his head, and he's going to attack whoever's in this room beforehand. So what is a grey slad, and what is his gemstone? Grey Slad is a being that has been summoned within the chaos of Limbo. So Limbo is a region that is just known for utter chaos. Long ago, Primus, the overlord of the Modrons, created a gigantic geometric complex adrift in Limbo, believing the stone would bring order to the chaos of the plane. And because of this, he ended up creating these Slad. The Slads have a part of the stone within them, and if you grab this stone, you can control a Slad. So the control gem is currently with Withers, the tomb's custodian within his office, and his office really close by is area 28. So he has a Slad's control gem. So once a Slad breaks free, he wants a control gem to make sure that he can't be controlled anymore. So Slads are big toll-like creatures that have various abilities, and they reproduce by, basically describe it, you ever seen the film Alien where they impregnate humans and it bursts out their chest? That is how a Slad populates itself. So you have different orders, so you have the red, the blue, the green and the grey. So red's the weakest, so you start off life as a red Slad, you then go to a blue Slad, you go to a green Slad, and then you get to a grey Slad, and finally, if a grey Slad eats a death Slad, he becomes one as well. And that is the final level of Slad. So what can a grey Slad do? Well, it can do spell casting, so it can cast Plane Shift, Fireball, Fear, Tongues, so it can speak to your characters. It can regenerate, and it has a multi-attack and a greatsword. How would you play the Slad then? Well, the Slad is hungry for rage and carnage, so he's going to attack his players whether through his god. So I would cast Fireball right away. I would make sure he's invisible, and then he wants to be invisible so he can attack with advantage with his greatsword, and then he will fight until death. So if your characters are inhabited by a trickster god, they'll gain these clues. If they're possessed by Cautious Oblaka, they think the salt pentagram could use some more salt and encourages her host to add to it if any salt is available. And doing this won't break the wards and they won't unleash the Slad. Relicus Wongo doesn't care much for the salt pentagrams, and he urges his host to wreck the symbol and see what happens. So once you defeat the Slad, you can open this sarcophagus with a strength check of 17, and within they see a varnished clay urn containing the skull and bones of a grung, Nang Nang's animal form. So inside the sarcophagus is a potion of poison, disguised as a potion of supreme healing, and a petrified gung egg that functions as a pearl of power. When your characters touch the pearl of power, they see this. As you touch the egg, a tincture of slime rises from its surface and transforms into a frog-like head that bobs towards you. A croaking voice sounds out in your mind. Nang Nang will help you now. So who is Nang Nang and what is its flaw? Nang Nang is the grung, is selfish and cruel. Your flaw: while inhabited by Nang Nang, you gain the following flaw which overrides any opposing flaw. I won't share with others. And your power: while inhabited by Nang Nang, you can move up, down and across vertical surfaces, upside down along ceilings, while leaving your hands free. You also gain a climbing speed equal to your walking speed. You can be like Spider-Man and you can walk up walls, walk on the ceiling. So what is a Pearl of Power? Well, while this pearl is on your person, you can use an action to speak its command word and regain one expelled spell slot. If the expelled slot is 4th level or higher, your new slot is a 3rd level. So yeah, Pearl of Power, it just effectively allows you to cast one extra spell a day at the highest level of 3rd level. So that is Nang Nang, and that is room 24. Thank you very much for watching episode 5 of the DM's Guide to Tomb of Annihilation. Next time we're going to discuss Papasol's tomb here, and then we're going to discuss the hidden rooms in this level, 23 and 25, and then we're finally going to discuss Weathers the Custodian, his control room, and the Tomb Dwarf's office. Thanks for watching again, like and subscribe, hopefully see you soon, ciao.